I need this job.
Why?
My son never lets anyone close.
He let me.
6 in the morning in Empire City, and Nia Carter stood outside a black iron gate with a folder shaking in her hands. Behind that gate was a house bigger than the block she grew up on. Inside that house was a 4-year-old boy she had never met. And somewhere in her chest, a voice kept whispering the same question it had whispered for 4 straight years. What if he did not die that night? Nia was not there for the salary, though the salary was more than she had made in 2 years combined. She was there because of one line in the job posting. Single father, 1 son, 4 years old, lost his mother young, discretion required. 4 years old, the exact age her own child would be. The child a hospital in this city had told her, in a cold hallway at 2 in the morning, did not survive. She had never been given a body to hold, only a folder, a signature, and a nurse who would not look her in the eye. For 4 years Nia had knocked on doors that closed in her face, chasing a feeling doctors called grief and she called instinct. Today instinct had a new name, Kang. She stepped through the gate. She did not know that inside, a small boy named Eli Kang sat by the window every single morning, refusing breakfast, refusing every nanny before her, waiting for a face he could not name. In 11 minutes, he would run to the front door before anyone called him, and nothing in that house would ever be the same again. If mothers who never stop searching move you, hit subscribe right now, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from tonight. The housekeeper, Ruth Alvarez, opened the door before Nia could knock twice. 4th nanny this year, Ruth said, not unkindly, just tired. He doesn't talk to strangers. Don't take it personal when he doesn't talk to you either. Nia nodded and followed her down a hallway lined with photographs of a woman she did not recognize, smiling beside a serious man in a dark suit. Grace Kang, the wife who had died. The mother the ad mentioned. Nia's stomach turned at every frame. Then she reached the sunroom and she saw him. Eli Kang sat cross-legged on the floor, small and still, a wooden train forgotten in his hand, the same train he carried to every meal and refused to leave behind even for sleep. He had not spoken a full sentence to a new face in over a year, not to the last 3 nannies, not to his own grandmother when she visited at Christmas. Everyone in that house had learned to expect silence from him. He looked up, and for 3 full seconds the room stopped breathing. Then he stood, walked straight past Ruth, past the 3 other staff members watching from the doorway, and wrapped both arms around Nia's legs like he had been waiting his whole life to do it. "Mommy," he said. Clear. Certain. Not a mistake. The word landed in that hallway like a dropped glass, and every adult in the room turned to stone. Ruth's mouth fell open. A second maid dropped a stack of towels. And at the top of the staircase, a woman in a gray tailored suit stopped walking entirely, her knuckles white around the banister. Her name was Vanessa Cole, cousin to the late Grace Kang, and chief of staff of the Kang family office. She had not said a word yet, but her eyes, locked on Nia Carter's face, held something far more dangerous than shock. They held recognition. By the time Daniel Kang came home that evening, the story had already traveled through every floor of the house. His son, who had not spoken a full sentence to a stranger in 14 months, had called a job applicant mommy within 90 seconds of meeting her. Daniel Kang was 36 years old, CEO of the Kang Group, a man who had rebuilt a struggling family company into a billion-dollar empire through nothing but discipline and control. He did not believe in coincidences. He believed in due diligence. And what he heard, standing in his own foyer with his tie still knotted, sounded less like a coincidence and more like a con. "You applied under your real name," he said to Nia, arms crossed, voice flat and careful. "You have no children listed on your application. No family in this city. And within 2 minutes, my son called you by a word he has not used since his mother died." He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. "Explain it to me. Because right now it looks like you did your research on this family before you ever walked through that gate." Nia held his stare. She had promised herself 4 years ago that she would never again let a room full of strangers make her feel like a liar for grieving. "I didn't teach him that word, Mr. Kang," she said quietly. "I didn't touch him. I didn't prompt him." He said it before I said a single sentence to him. Vanessa Cole stepped forward from the hallway, arms folded, voice smooth as glass. Or she's very good at this. Nannies who target grieving families are not exactly rare, Daniel. I'll have security review her background tonight. Nia felt the walls of the room close in, just like they had 4 years ago. Not this time, she told herself. Not without answers. If you think you know Nia's secret, comment your guess below, subscribe so you don't miss the twist because you don't know the half of it yet. Daniel gave Nia 1 week. 1 week to prove there was nothing behind the word his son had spoken. 1 week before he would replace her like every nanny before her. What he did not know was that Nia had already seen something, in the 2 minutes she spent in that sunroom, that no one else in the house had noticed. A small quilted blanket draped over Eli's toy chest, hand-stitched, with a tiny embroidered tag sewn into the corner. Half a tag, torn clean across the middle. Nia had sewn the other half herself 4 years ago, into a blanket she still kept folded at the bottom of her one suitcase. She said nothing that first night. She only watched and waited and worked. She learned Eli hated loud rooms, loved trains, and flinched every time someone raised their voice near the staircase. She learned Ruth Alvarez had worked for the Kang family for 11 years and missed Grace Kang like a sister. And she learned that Vanessa Cole visited the nursery late at night, alone when she believed no one else was watching, and opened a locked drawer that held a small memory box no one had shown to Nia. On the 4th night, Eli woke screaming from a nightmare, and it was Nia's name he called through the wall, not Ruth's, not his father's. Daniel arrived first, breathless, and found his son already curled against Nia's shoulder, calm within seconds, the way he had not been calm with anyone in over a year. Daniel stood frozen in the doorway, watching his son's small hand fisted in the collar of a stranger's shirt, and something in his careful, controlled chest cracked open just slightly. He hasn't slept through a night since Grace, he said quietly, almost to himself. Not once. Not with me. Not with anyone. Tell me about her, Nia said, gentler than she meant to. Daniel's jaw tightened. She wanted this child more than anything in the world. We tried for 3 years before that. 2 losses no one outside this family ever knew about. She was told she couldn't carry a pregnancy safely. Then suddenly everything changed. Vanessa found a specialist. Private arrangement, she called it. Grace was overjoyed. 8 months later I had a son, and 4 months after that, I had a funeral. He looked at Nia like the words cost him something. I never asked enough questions. I was closing the largest acquisition of my career the week Eli was born. I trusted my wife's family to handle it. I have regretted that silence every day since. Nia's hands went cold around the folded blanket in her lap. A private arrangement. A specialist Vanessa found. Grace overjoyed after being told she could not carry a pregnancy at all. Every sentence Daniel spoke matched a hole in Nia's own story from 4 years ago. The sudden transfer to a different wing of the hospital, the doctor she never saw again, the discharge papers a nurse rushed her to sign while she was still weeping. She did not accuse anyone that night. She only asked to see the blanket in the memory box, and Daniel, for reasons he could not fully explain to himself, said yes. The box was gone by morning. The drawer stood empty, and Vanessa Cole claimed no knowledge of it, her voice pleasant, her eyes ice. Sentimental clutter, she told Daniel over coffee, loud enough for Nia to hear from the hallway. I donated it weeks ago. You should be asking why the new nanny is suddenly so interested in a dead woman's belongings, not where I put old fabric. Daniel said nothing in Nia's defense. Not yet. And Nia understood, with a familiar aching clarity, that proof this powerful does not vanish by accident. Someone had known exactly what that torn tag could reveal, and someone had made sure it disappeared before anyone else could see it. By Friday, Vanessa had taken the fight further than Nia expected. She called an emergency session with the Kang Group board, framing the situation as a liability days before the company's public offering. A nanny making unverified claims about the CEO's dead wife, a scandal that could spook investors overnight. She recommended Nia's immediate termination and a signed confidentiality agreement before Monday's opening bell. Daniel refused the agreement outright, but for the first time, Nia watched real hesitation cross his face, the weight of a billion-dollar company pressing against one week-old truth he had not yet proven. The clock was no longer just personal. It was ticking against a boardroom too. 2 nights later, Ruth Alvarez knocked on Nia's door long after midnight, holding a small cloth bundle wrapped in an old kitchen towel. "I took it out of that box the week Grace died," Ruth whispered. "Something told me to keep it safe. I didn't know why until I watched that boy run to you, like you were the sun coming up." Inside the towel was the missing half of the blanket, and stitched into its corner, a torn embroidered tag that read in careful thread, half a name and half a date. Nia unfolded her own blanket with trembling hands and laid the 2 torn edges together on the bed. They matched. Every thread, every stitch, every letter. Whole again after 4 years apart. Nia pressed both halves against her chest and finally let herself believe what her body had known since the moment Eli ran across that sunroom floor. The next morning, Nia requested one thing from Daniel: a private paternity and maternity test, run through an outside lab of his choosing, no Kang family staff involved. Daniel agreed before Vanessa could object, something unreadable moving behind his eyes. While they waited 3 unbearable days for results, Nia finally told him everything. The hospital, the 2 in the morning hallway, the nurse who would not meet her eyes, for years of doors closing in her face every time she asked to see a record that no longer existed. Daniel listened without interrupting once, his hands clenched so tightly on the table that his knuckles went white. "The hospital that delivered my son," he said slowly, "closed its maternity wing 18 months later under an unrelated malpractice review. I never once connected it to anything. Vanessa handled every document. I signed what she placed in front of me and buried my wife 2 months after burying my questions." He looked at Nia, and for the first time since the gate, since the folder, since the word mommy dropped like glass in his hallway, his voice broke completely. "If this is true, I did not just fail my son by trusting the wrong person. I failed you before I ever met you. What happens next changes this family forever." If you're still here, like this video, subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from because the truth is about to break everything. The results came back on a Thursday afternoon. 99.99%. Eli Kang was Nia Carter's biological son, taken from a hospital bed while she was still bleeding and half-conscious, handed across a city to a grieving, desperate, unknowing woman who only wanted to be a mother and never knew the price had been another mother's unbearable grief. Vanessa Cole had arranged the transfer through a corrupt hospital administrator, paid in cash from a family trust account, timed perfectly around Daniel's most demanding week of business, so that no one who mattered would ever ask the right question at the right time. Justice is one word away. If you want to see Vanessa exposed, like this video right now, subscribe if you haven't, and comment where you're watching from because Nia earned this moment. Daniel confronted Vanessa in the same foyer where Eli had first said Nia's stolen name. Security stood at the door. Papers from the outside lab spread across the entry table like evidence at a trial. "For years," Daniel said, quiet in the way that frightened people more than shouting ever could. "For years, a mother spent knocking on doors you built to stay locked. For years, my son cried through nights you could have prevented with one honest sentence." Vanessa's composure finally cracked. "Grace couldn't carry a child, Daniel. I found a way to give her one. I gave your family exactly what you wanted. You stole a woman's son," Daniel said, "and sold my wife a lie to keep her quiet and yourself untouchable." He turned to security without raising his voice again. "Escort Ms. Cole off this property. My legal team will be in touch, and so will the district attorney." Vanessa was gone within the hour, her office cleared by nightfall, her name already moving through calls Daniel made personally to every regulator and reporter who would listen. Ruth stood quietly in the hallway as security walked Vanessa past the photographs of Grace Kang, and for the first time in 11 years, Ruth did not feel sorry for her. The board meeting that had once threatened to end Nia's future became, by Monday morning, the very reason the truth could never again be buried, because Daniel made certain every investor heard it from him first, in his own words, before anyone else could shape the story. That night, for the first time since Nia had walked through the iron gate, the house was quiet in a way that felt like peace instead of fear. Eli fell asleep between them on the living room floor, one small hand fisted in Nia's sleeve, the other resting on his father's arm, as if some part of him had always known they belonged in the same room. Daniel looked at Nia over their son's dark hair and said the only thing left worth saying. "I spent 1 week doubting the one person who never lied to this family. I don't intend to spend the rest of my life doing the same thing." Nia let herself cry then, For years of tears she had been too proud, too tired, too disbelieved to release in front of anyone. Daniel did not look away. He simply reached across their sleeping son and held her hand until the sun came up over Empire City. Beside them, folded neatly on the couch, sat the blanket, both half stitched whole again by Ruth's patient hands, the torn tag finally readable in full. A name, a date, a beginning that had never actually ended, only waited. In the months that followed, Nia Carter did not disappear back into the ordinary life she had been fighting to survive. She stayed. Not as staff, not as a secret, but as Eli's mother in every legal, permanent, undeniable sense of the word, and slowly, carefully, as the woman Daniel Kang chose to build a future beside. Eli never stopped calling her mommy. This time, the whole house knew exactly why, and no one in it ever doubted the word again. If this story moves something in you tonight, that is exactly why we tell them. If you believe love finds its way back to the people who deserve it, hit subscribe to Empire City Romance Stories right now, so you never miss the next one. Like this video if Nia earned every second of her happy ending, and comment below and tell us where in the world you are watching from tonight. Turn on notifications because our next story drops soon, and you will not want to miss it. Thank you for watching. We will see you in the next one.